0615 on September 20, 1944, Major Charles Carpenter crouched beside his Piper L4 Grasshopper on a muddy airstrip near Héricourt, France, watching fog roll across fields where German Panther tanks were advancing toward trapped American positions. He was 32 years old, with 47 combat sorties already under his belt and 6 bazookas bolted to his wings. The German 5th Panzer Army had launched 262 tanks and assault guns against Combat Command A of the 4th Armored Division 2 days earlier. Carpenter was a high school history teacher from Moline, Illinois before the war. He taught teenagers about battles from books and maps. Now he flew a fabric-covered observation plane with a 65-horsepower engine over real battles where men burned inside steel coffins. The L4 Grasshopper weighed 765 pounds empty. Its maximum payload was 232 pounds, assuming a pilot and no radio. Carpenter had mounted 6 M9 bazooka launchers on the wing struts. Each launcher weighed 15 pounds. The M6A3 high-explosive anti-tank, heat rockets added another 3 pounds each, for 18 total rockets. The mathematics said his plane was overloaded by nearly 90 pounds. Every other L4 pilot in France flew reconnaissance missions. Spot enemy positions, call coordinates to artillery, stay high, stay safe. The Germans barely bothered shooting at Cubs. They were too small, too harmless. Carpenter had spent 3 months watching American tank crews die while he circled overhead with binoculars and a radio. The 4th Armored Division lost 48 Shermans in the first 2 days at Héricourt. German Panthers could penetrate Sherman armor at 1,200 yards. American 75mm guns needed 300 yards for a kill shot. Most Sherman crews never got close enough to fire. On September 18th, the fog came before dawn, and German tanks used it for cover. Carpenter took off at first light, but the ground disappeared beneath white nothingness. He circled blind for 90 minutes. By the time the fog lifted, 11 American Shermans were burning in the fields around Luneville. He watched crews bail out. Some made it, most did not. One Sherman took a hit to the ammunition storage. The explosion threw the turret 40 feet. Carpenter saw the loader stumble out with his uniform on fire. The man took 5 steps and collapsed. Carpenter could do nothing except mark the position and call it in. September 19th, the 113th Panzer Brigade pushed through American outposts near Héricourt. 43 Panthers destroyed or damaged by midnight. American tankers fought from concealed positions, using terrain and surprise. It worked, barely. But Combat Command A was spread thin across 12 miles of rolling farmland, and the Germans kept coming. 2 weeks earlier, Carpenter heard about Lieutenant Harley Merrick and Lieutenant Roy Carson. They mounted bazookas on their L4s and destroyed 2 German trucks. Carpenter wanted tanks. He found an ordnance tech and a crew chief willing to help. They bolted 3 M9 launchers to each wing strut, just outboard of the jury struts, angled upward 20 degrees. Electronic triggers wired to switches in the cockpit, individual fire or full salvo. The crew chief named the plane Rosie the Rocketer. Other pilots called it suicide. If you want to see whether Carpenter's bazooka-armed Grasshopper could actually destroy German tanks, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories from World War II. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Carpenter. The fabric on the L4's wings was treated cotton. The bazooka rockets produced 1,200 degrees of exhaust flame. Nobody knew if the wings would catch fire. Nobody knew if the overloaded Grasshopper could pull out of a dive steep enough to aim the angled launchers. Nobody had tested it in combat. September 20th, morning fog. German tanks attacking through the mist. Carpenter climbed into the cockpit alone. No observer, no radio. Operator, just him and 18 rockets. The engine coughed twice and caught. He released the brakes, and the overloaded Grasshopper lurched forward. By noon, he would either be dead or he would change how Cubs fought. The Grasshopper climbed through fog at 400 feet per minute. Maximum climb rate was 600, but the extra weight cost performance. Carpenter leveled off at 1,500 feet. White nothingness below, white nothingness ahead. He throttled back to cruising speed, 75 mph. The engine settled into a steady drone. Fuel capacity was 12 gallons. Endurance roughly 3 hours. He had left at 0642. By 0930, the fog still had not lifted. The L4 handled differently with the bazookas mounted. The launchers created drag. The rockets added weight to the wings. Carpenter tested shallow banks. The Grasshopper responded sluggishly. He pushed the nose. Down 5 degrees. The fabric wings creaked. The bazooka tubes caught wind and pulled. This was not the gentle cub he had flown on artillery spotting missions. This was something heavier, something angrier. At 0953, the fog began breaking apart in patches. Carpenter saw ground through gaps, fields, trees, the Rhine-Marne Canal reflecting gray sky. He dropped to 1,000 feet and began a systematic search pattern, north to south, east to west, looking for German armor. The 4th Armored Division's Combat Command. A held positions around Ericourt and the surrounding villages, Juvisy to the north, Moyenvic to the south, Bézange-la-Petite to the east. German forces had attacked from multiple directions, trying to encircle American units. Carpenter needed to find where they were massing for the next push. 1107. The fog cleared enough to see the roads. Carpenter spotted movement. 3 miles northeast of Ericourt, he descended to 800 feet. Panther tanks. He counted 6, maybe 7. Difficult to tell, with some partially hidden in tree lines. Armored cars moving with them, infantry following on foot. The formation was advancing southwest toward American positions. Carpenter checked his fuel. Enough for 1 attack run and 90 minutes reserved to return to base. The M9 bazooka had an effective range of 300 yards. The rockets traveled at 265 feet per second. Gravity and wind affected trajectory beyond 100 meters. Carpenter needed to get close, very close. The bazookas were angled upward 20 degrees from horizontal. To aim them at a target on the ground, Carpenter had to put the Grasshopper into a shallow dive. 30 degrees nose down, maybe 35. Aim with the entire aircraft. Fire at 100 meters. Pull up before German infantry opened fire with small arms. He climbed to 1,200 feet and positioned himself south of the German column, sun behind him. The Panthers were moving slowly, through terrain, still partially obscured by ground fog. Carpenter pushed the throttle forward and nosed over. The Grasshopper accelerated in the dive, 80 in Pincortis, 90. The fabric wings vibrated. The bazooka tubes screamed in the wind. He could see individual Panthers now, turrets traversing, commanders standing in hatches. He armed the first launcher, right wing outboard position. His thumb rested on the firing switch, 150 meters. The lead Panther grew larger in his windscreen, 120 meters. He could see the German cross markings on the turret, 100 meters. Carpenter pressed the switch. The M6A3 rocket ignited with a crack that shook the entire airframe. 1,200 degrees of exhaust flame shot backward, missing the fabric wing by inches. The rocket streaked toward the Panther, trailing white smoke. Carpenter did not wait to see impact. He hauled back on the stick, and the overloaded plane responded slowly, too slowly. German infantry below opened fire. Small arms, machine pistols, rifle. Rounds snapped past the cockpit. One punched through the fabric on the left wing. Another hit the tail section. Carpenter kept climbing. 200 feet, 300. The firing stopped. He leveled off at 800 feet and looked back. The Panther had stopped moving. Smoke rose from the engine deck. Not destroyed, immobilized. The rocket had hit the thinner armor on top or damaged the engine. The rest of the German column had scattered into defensive positions. Infantry were pointing at the sky, at him. At the cub with bazookas that just attacked a Panther tank. Carpenter had 17 rockets remaining, and the Germans were no longer ignoring observation planes. Carpenter turned the Grasshopper northwest toward the American airstrip at Lunéville. Fuel gauge showed 9 gallons remaining, enough for reloading and 1 more sortie, maybe 2 if he stayed over friendly territory. The bullet holes in the wing and tail were small. The fabric held. The control surfaces responded normally. He descended to 100 feet and followed the terrain back to base, using trees and ridges for cover. German infantry now knew cubs could bite. He touched down at 11:58. Ground crew ran to the plane before the propeller stopped turning. They saw the bullet holes first. Then they saw the empty bazooka tube. One crew chief climbed onto the wing and examined where the rocket had fired. The fabric around the launcher was scorched black, but intact. No burn-through. The metal tube had channeled most of the exhaust away from the wing surface. The design worked, barely. Reloading took 14 minutes. 6 M6A3 rockets slid into the launch tubes. Each rocket weighed 3.38 pounds, Total weight 19.4 inches long. Blunted nose designed to prevent deflection at low impact angles. Shaped charge warhead could penetrate 3.5 to 4 inches of armor plate. The crew chief asked what Carpenter hit. One Panther immobilized. The crew chief asked how close he got. 100 meters. The crew chief said that was insane. Carpenter said it was effective. 12:19. Carpenter took off again. Fuel load 11.7 gallons. Maximum capacity was 12, but ground crew could not completely fill tanks during rapid turnaround. 18 rockets total across both sorties. 6 expended, 12 remaining. He climbed to 1,200 feet and turned east toward Eracourt. The fog had mostly cleared. Visibility extended to 5 miles. German positions were now exposed to American air observation. Carpenter scanned for armor concentrations. He spotted another formation, 8 Panther tanks moving south along a tree line east of Bézange-la-Petite, infantry following in half tracks. This was a larger force than the first, probably elements of the 111th Panzer Brigade attempting to flank American positions. Carpenter radioed coordinates to Combat Command A. Artillery received. Acknowledgement, but artillery took time. Shells had to be ranged, adjusted, walked onto target. The Panthers would be gone before rounds landed. Carpenter decided to attack immediately. He climbed to 1,500 feet and positioned for a diving attack from the southwest. Sun still behind him. The Panthers were spread across 400 yards of road. Carpenter selected the lead tank. Same technique as before. Nose down 35 degrees. Accelerate in the dive. 100 meters range. Fire. The first rocket launched clean. He pulled up hard and banked left. Machine gun fire followed him, heavier than before. The Germans had learned. They were ready. Tracers arced past the cockpit. Something hit the engine cowling with a metallic clang. The Continental engine coughed once, but kept running. Carpenter circled wide at 1,000 feet and looked back. The lead Panther had stopped. Smoke from the engine compartment. Immobilized, not destroyed. The rest of the formation scattered into dispersed positions. Infantry dismounted from half tracks. Some were setting up what looked like anti-aircraft positions. Carpenter had 11 rockets left, but the Germans were now actively hunting him. He lined up for a second pass, dove toward a Panther that had pulled off the road into a field, armed the launcher. 120 meters. German infantry opened fire while he was still descending. The Grasshopper shuddered. Fabric ripped somewhere behind him. He fired anyway. The rocket streaked down. Carpenter pulled up without confirming impact. More tracers. Something punched through the lower fuselage. He felt the impact through the rudder pedals. 800 feet. He leveled off and checked instruments. Oil pressure normal. Engine temperature normal. Controls responsive except the rudder felt mushy. He looked back. The second Panther was burning. Not immobilized. Destroyed. Flames poured. From the turret hatches, crew bailing out. But Carpenter's tail section had multiple tears in the fabric. One elevator cable looked frayed. The rudder was responding, but with noticeable delay. 2 Panthers stopped, 10 rockets remaining. But his aircraft was damaged, and the Germans were setting up dedicated anti-aircraft positions around their remaining armor. Carpenter turned west toward Lunéville. The damaged rudder made coordinated turns difficult. He had to overcompensate with aileron inputs. The Grasshopper wanted to slip sideways in banks. Fuel gauge showed 7.2 gallons, enough to reach base with minimal reserve. The engine still ran smoothly, but the oil temperature had climbed 5 degrees above normal. Not critical yet. Possibly a small leak from the round that hit the cowling.